All right, so in today's video, we're looking at the characteristics of motor skills. So what we're really doing here is looking at how different skills that athletes would use can be defined, okay? So whether it is a part of a skill or a whole part of a skill, and there's going to be a whole range of them. I'm going to give you about 12 different definitions today, and what it looks like, and then we'll give an example for that as well, so that you'll be able to talk about them in your responses. Let's go. Okay, so our first two, we've got closed and open. And I've put this verse here, closed verse open. What you'll notice in today's video, except for one set of these, they're always going to be in pairs. Okay, so so you're either going to have one or the other, and then most of the time it can't be both. All right, but there is, later on when we do the three set, there's a difference there. But anyway, for now, think of these as opposite. A skill can't be closed and open at the same time. All right. So the first one is a closed skill versus an open skill. A closed skill is one that's performed in a static or predictable or a controlled environment. Whichever word you want to remember, do that. You don't need to write all three of them. It is performed in a static or predictable or controlled environment. For example, practicing free throw shots. All right. So if I went down to the basketball court with my ball and I said, I'm going to do 50 free throw shots. There's no opposition. It's just me, the ball, and the hoop and the backboard. Okay. Predictable environment. Nothing's going to change that except for my technique and my practice. Another example would be going to the gym and doing squats, or pretty much anything you do at the gym is going to be a closed environment, because hopefully you're not squatting while you're trying to dodge people, because you'd probably get really badly hurt. So yeah, anything at the gym can be typically deemed as closed. I've also and thinking about it, and I wrote it down here, but not even practicing free throw shots. In a game of basketball, if you had a penalty free throw shot, okay, and it's just you at the line and you've got your two to sink, that's still a closed skill, because the opposition or your players can't really do anything about it to influence that shot. I mean, obviously you'll be feeling a bit of anxiety and a bit of pressure to sink them, but for mostly that's still a closed skill. Whereas an open skill is performed in an unstable and an unpredictable environment, open to external influence. So now we're looking at shooting in a game of basketball. Did you see Josh Giddey's finish for the Bulls on the weekend? That was an amazing couple of minutes of basketball there, and I highly suggest you all watch it. I might be able to put it into this clip. Anyway, that was an open environment, and he did very well. Or, for example, striking to score a goal in soccer. Okay, so you're kicking the ball and then you're just having a shot. So to do that, you've got to get around defenders, and then you've obviously got to kick the ball past the goalkeeper. Okay, the closed version of this would be practicing scoring goals when there wasn't a goalkeeper. So it's just you, the ball, and the goals. That would be closed. There's no influence. But having the goalkeeper there makes it open. So that's closed and open. I don't know whether you guys can hear the lovely tunes of the jazz band in the background, but if you can, enjoy that. Sorry, something I should have probably put on the previous screen in hindsight, and I'll fix it going forward. I'm sorry, my bad. We should probably implement how or where in our stages of skill acquisition, which we did in the previous video, where this stuff fits, okay? So closed skills are going to be best for our cognitive learners. So the people that are learning to do a skill, they don't need the extra pressure of defenders and the unchanging environment. They should just be practicing on their technique and just them and the skill, all right? Now you can sort of think of it as a continuum. As you progress from the cognitive to the end of cognitive to the start of associative and then through into autonomous, you should start to implement more open skills. Okay, so as they're more confident doing the skill itself, then you can start to implement, some sort of openness to it. And then as they get into the autonomous stage, they probably shouldn't be doing closed skills at all. It should be heavily focused around open skills so that they can start to apply tactics and strategy as to how to beat defenders and stuff. Yeah, so add that information back into the previous bit. Thanks. Okay, so our next pair, while it's a pair, there are parts of skills that are going to be this part, and there are parts that are going to be this part. So these don't exactly, they're definitely opposites, but at the same time, skills can involve both of these parts, all right? So they're not exclusive. So our first one is a gross motor skill. A gross motor skill is one that uses large body or muscle or skeletal movement, okay? Such as running or jumping or throwing overarm. So I'm using large muscles of the body, okay? I'm using large actions, and therefore it is a gross motor skill. Versus a fine motor skill, which uses small, precise body movements, okay? Such as the wrist flick at the end of a throw. So even though if I'm throwing a ball and I throw it, okay, I wonder if I can do that in slow-mo, okay? Because I've got great throwing technique. So most of my body is using gross motor skill, but then at the end I'm going, okay? That little flick, that's a fine motor skill. So throwing a ball overarm is both combined, all right? Another one would be throwing darts, okay? So if I am, this arm or elbow action is going to be gross, but then the flick and especially the little twist, you know, the twist that they do. I love watching darts. It's the same as lawn bowlers. You ever just like sit at, like, I don't know, before the internet came along and you had nothing to watch on TV and there's someone playing, like doing darts or lawn bowls? I'd sit for hours and watch that stuff. Guess that's why I have no friends. But these skills can be applied at all learning stages. Whether you're a cognitive, associative, or autonomous learner, you need to learn how to move with gross motor skills and also apply the fine motor skills. However, there's a caveat. As you become more autonomous, and now we're focusing on strategy and tactics, there's going to be more emphasis on our fine skills. So if you think of like me playing table tennis, which I'm terrible at, we should go play table tennis one day. Absolutely terrible. I am so clunky and all I do is gross motor skills, okay? You know, I'm trying my best to just connect with the ball. However, elite tennis, well, not even elite, right? Better table tennis players will do little top spins and back spins and wrist flicks and stuff like that. And that's applying tactics and strategy to make it harder for the person to return, all right? So me, table tennis, up here, mostly gross skills. Better table tennis players are able to do the little funny, you know, wrist flicks and get top spin and back spin and side spin and et cetera, et cetera. Or if you look at bowling and cricket, okay, most people that bowl in cricket are going to be pace bowlers and they don't swing the ball, they don't do spin, they don't do leg spin, off spin, et cetera. It's just straight, okay? However, a better pace bowler will be able to put in swing or out swing onto the seam. Or if you're looking at spin bowling, you're able to do an off spin, which is going to be, you know, about here halfway, or leg spin, which is much more trickier, which would be down here. So that's our gross and fine motor skills. All right, so our next two, we've got our self-paced versus externally paced skills. A self-paced skill is a skill that starts and finishes when the athlete decides it does. So there's no response or pressure. You start it when you're ready, and then the skill finishes when you finish. For example, serving in tennis, okay? So I can bounce and bounce and bounce, throw it up, hit it, all right? No one's pressuring me. I don't need to keep an eye out for defenders or anything like that. I can just go. Like, obviously there is a general time pressure of doing that, but it's not like 3, 2, 1, serve. You know, I get given like 20 or 30 seconds to serve. Another one would be bowling in 10-pin, okay? I can pick my ball up, you know, line it up, shuffle a little bit to the right, look at the arrows on the ground, and then get ready for my beautiful heel flick, which I'm amazing at. But either way, that is a self-paced skill because it starts and it finishes when I say it does. However, an externally paced skill is a skill that starts due to external stimulus. So looking at the tennis serve, if the tennis serve itself is a self-paced skill, then on the other side of the court, the return is a externally paced skill because you have to do that skill. You have to play your forehand or your backhand when the ball comes to you, externally paced. You don't get to decide when you do that. I mean, you do get to decide when you play the skill, but it's based on hitting the ball. Another one would be like the start of a drag race, okay? So the two cars are lined up at the line and you get the lights and it goes doot, 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 and then they go beep. That's externally paced, all right? They don't get to decide when they put their foot down. They put the foot down when the light's green, you know, if they want to win. Anyway. So self-paced and externally paced skills, once again, they're going to apply to all stages of our learners. However, if you are a cognitive learner, you probably should put more practice and emphasis on self-paced skills so that the learner can just get used to doing the skill and not be pressured. Whereas if you're an autonomous, like in the associative to autonomous stage, then you should be putting pressure on yourself at practice so that you become comfortable with pressure and you work well under pressure. Because working under pressure is also a skill, okay? The more you do it, the better you get at it, all right? You can't just like practice doing something 100 times and then repeat that in a game situation if you haven't practiced the game situation, because people freak out all the time and then they just lose it. Australia has a really good sporting history of that happening. Anyway, it's beside the point. Anyway, that's self-paced and externally paced. Okay, so our three. I told you there was going to be 3 here that aren't exactly opposites of each other. So we've got discrete, serial, and continuous skills. A discrete skill has a distinct start and end point, all right? So for example, shooting a free throw, shot put, doing a squat, okay? There's a start point, there's a finish point. The skill is basically able to be repeated often, okay, and repetitive. It's not a massive effort to start and finish. And what you can do with discrete skills is you can just do heaps and heaps of them, okay? Massed practice. Serial skills are a collection of many discrete skills put together. So doing a free throw shot is a discrete skill, but playing basketball is a serial skill. Because when you play basketball, surely you're going to be shooting the ball. You might do some 3-point shots. You might do some layups. You might do some movement around the court. You might do some dribbling. You might do some defending. You might do some body checking, all right? They're all discrete skills, and you put them together, and it's called basketball. Another example I've got here is performing the long jump, all right? So you might think, oh, the long jump's a discrete skill because it's got a start point and a finish point. Well, yes, it does, but in that start point to the finish, there's actually 3 parts of the skill that an athlete can practice individually. You can practice your run-up to make sure that you get the right length. You can practice the actual jumping part, so leaping off the board, making sure that your foot's in the right spot, making sure you get in the right power. And you can actually also practice the landing, making sure that you're landing in an appropriate way so that your body is propelled forwards and not backwards, all right? And then thirdly, we've got continuous skill. So the continuous skill has no defined endpoint except for maybe like a finish line. You, as the athlete, basically decide when it starts and you decide when it finishes. There's no, like, you know, with a free throw, you are throwing the ball and it's literally, the skill finishes when the ball leaves your hand, right? It's not like that with continuous skills. You just do them. And the easiest way to remember continuous skills is things that you do continuous. Running, walking, cycling, swimming. You just keep going until either you stop because you're tired or you stop because you've got to the finish of the race. Now, as far as coaching goes, we've got that our cognitive learners will probably focus more on discrete skills, so the parts, and if they are like a player that's doing one of these things, they'll often break up serial skills into discrete skills so that they can just practice parts of the movements or part of the actual serial skill itself to refine them all and then put it all together. Yeah. All right, so our last ones, we've got individual skills, co-active skills, and interactive skills. So individual skills are performed solo or one at a time. So you're not influenced by anyone else around you. It's just you and the skill. For example, doing a long jump, doing a high jump, doing pole vault, throwing a javelin, throwing a shot put. I've also got race car time trial. So basically where they do one lap, but there's no one else on the track except you. All right, so it's just you. It's you and the skill. Co-active skills are performed at the same time as other athletes, but you don't directly interact. For example, swimming races, running races, okay? Anything like that where you are still doing the same skill as others around you, but you don't influence each other. There's no pushing and shoving and punching and kicking and biting and stuff like that. Then the last one we've got are our interactive skills. So these are performed with direct influence and contact with other people, such as playing a game of soccer, doing an actual race car race, you know, like the Bathurst 1000. So you can probably start to think that skills up here, individual ones, where you're not influenced by anyone at all, they're better, and even co-active skills, they're better for cognitive and associative learners. And what cognitive and associative learners will do is they'll take something like playing soccer, but they will break down the skills and then do them in a closed environment up here to make them more individual skills. And then they'll obviously have to do it in the game. But when you're like an autonomous learner, doing this solo stuff probably isn't going to benefit you. You probably need to be in that game situation as much as possible so you can develop your strategy and tactics, etc. Now I'm going to rub this off, and I am going to do one more example on the board to show you that skills are not just one thing or the other. It's a combination of all the things that we've covered in today's video. You know what? I don't know if I can give myself credit, but I have nailed this. I've just done this on the fly, and I was like, oh, I want to have a range of examples, and I've given you like 3 examples, and it covers like all of them. It's amazing. It's amazing work. I'm really happy with myself. So how do we combine terms? So in a test situation or a question, you're asked to, can you characterize squatting as a skill? It's not good enough to say that squatting is a closed skill. What you would be expected to do is go through all the categories that we covered in this video, tell the marker what are the definitions for that type of skill, and why. All right. So combination of terms. So if we look at a squat is a closed skill, it's a gross skill, it's a discrete skill, it is self-paced, and it is individual. If we then compete in a swimming race, all right, it is also a closed skill. It is a gross skill, but there are elements of swimming which are fine. It is a continuous skill. It is externally paced, and it is coactive. And then finally, if we look at playing a game of rugby, it is an open skill. It has gross and fine movements. It is serial, which is a collection of discrete. It is externally paced, and it is an interactive. So you can see that when we talk about skills in nature, all skills will probably have one of 5 definitions, and you need to be comfortable with all these definitions, and you should be able to list all of them for each skill. And that is the end of our characteristics of motor skills video. Thanks.